Brooklyn at the turn of the 20th century, a melting pot, a pressure cooker, and the stomping grounds for a comedy dynasty in the making. Forget the Hollywood glitz, forget the million-dollar contracts. This is where it all began, in the crowded tenements and bustling streets of Brooklyn, New York. This is the story of the Horwitz family, Jewish immigrants striving for a slice of the American dream. And at the heart of this story, two brothers, Moses Harry Horwitz and Jerome Lester Horwitz, known to the world as Moe and Curly. Picture it, a modest home, overflowing with life, with 5 boys vying for attention, affection, and the last scrap of food on the table. Born on June 19, 1897, Moses, or Moe, as he was called, quickly took on the mantle of responsibility. He wasn't necessarily the biggest or the toughest kid on the block, but he possessed a fierce loyalty and a protective instinct, especially when it came to his younger siblings. School records show a, shall we say, spirited young man, not afraid to tangle with bullies, often stepping in to defend those smaller and weaker than himself. Even back then, he was the one with the plan, the organizer, the guy who made sure things were running, even if it meant running afoul of the authorities. He was the rock, the anchor, a trait that would define him both on and off the stage. Then there was Jerome, born on October 22, 1903, 6 years Moe's junior. This age gap cemented Moe's position as protector, but it also fostered a deep and enduring bond. Jerome, or Babe, as he was affectionately known within the family, possessed a disarming charm, a natural ability to find humor in the everyday. He wasn't trying to be funny, it just was. Clumsy, mischievous, endearingly goofy, these were the qualities that would later blossom into the iconic Curly persona. Where Moe exuded intensity and determination, Jerome radiated warmth and silliness. He had this uncanny knack for turning any situation, no matter how tense or awkward, into something light and laughable. It was an innate gift, unpolished, unrehearsed, pure Jerome. Imagine those Brooklyn streets, Moe, perpetually serious, scouting for potential threats, while Jerome, tripping over cracks in the sidewalk, barking at stray dogs or launching into impromptu, high-pitched gibberish routines that delighted the neighborhood kids. He didn't need a stage or a script. The world was his comedy club. It was this inherent comedic talent that drew people to him, this infectious joy that could disarm even the most hardened New Yorker. The early 20th century was a transformative time, and one major invention had started to make its way into even the most underprivileged homes, exposing whole new worlds: cinema. Nickelodeons and small theaters offered a temporary escape from the hardships of working-class life. And Moe, he was hooked. He'd often ditch school, trading textbooks for the flickering images of Charlie Chaplin, Harold Lloyd, and Buster Keaton. He'd study their every move, dissecting their gags, analyzing their timing, memorizing their expressions. He was a student of comedy, absorbing the masters, honing his own skills. Jerome sometimes tagged along, mimicking what he saw on the screen, further fueling his natural comedic instincts. Moe dreamed of bigger stages than Brooklyn. By his teens, his passion for performing overshadowed any interest in academics, a move that caused friction with his parents. Being expelled from school when the family was already struggling financially was a gamble, to say the least. But the small parts he landed in amateur theater fueled his fire, validated his ambition. His mother, Jenny, though strict, saw the spark in Moe, respected his drive, even when she couldn't fully understand it. Jenny also understood the yin and yang of her 2 sons. Moe, the driven one, the protector, the silent guardian, and Jerome, the heart, the gentle spirit, the one who could lift the family's spirits even on the darkest days. In hindsight, Moe's intensity and Jerome's innocence were the glue holding the family together. Qualities that would eventually merge and form the very foundation of one of the most beloved comedy acts in history. But back then, they were just 2 brothers, navigating the challenges of growing up in Brooklyn, forging a bond through shared experiences, humor, and unwavering loyalty. Moe became Jerome's protector, his guide, his rock. Jerome became Moe's outlet, his source of levity, the reminder that even in the toughest times there was always room for laughter. Their relationship wasn't just familial, it was symbiotic. And it's important to understand that this bond transcended the professional. For Jerome, Moe was more than just a brother. He was a father figure, a protector, and at times a demanding boss. Jerome wasn't just an actor. He was Moe's baby brother, the one he felt responsible for, a feeling that would linger until their final days together. This deep-seated sense of responsibility explains both the glory and the guilt that would define their lives. Brooklyn gave them grit. It gave them resilience. It gave them that unique spark, that special brand of humor that would evolve from street corners to vaudeville stages to the silver screen. But as their ambitions grew beyond the borough, the question loomed. Would even Moe's unwavering discipline and Jerome's boundless innocence be enough to withstand the ruthless world of professional entertainment? Brooklyn boys conquer vaudeville. By the early 1930s, Moe Howard was already a seasoned performer. He'd spent years honing his craft in vaudeville, paying his dues in various acts, including a stint with the notoriously difficult Ted Healy. Healy's act, known as Ted Healy and His Stooges, was a chaotic blend of physical comedy, insults, and improvisation. Moe was a key player, the aggressive, bowl-cutted straight man who dished out the slaps and pokes while keeping the madness somewhat under control. Alongside Moe were his brother Shemp Howard and a talented violinist turned comedian named Larry Fine. The act was gaining traction, but it was far from the iconic status it would later achieve. Then a twist of fate changed everything. Shemp, ever the ambitious one, decided to pursue a solo career in 1932, leaving a gaping hole in Healy's lineup. Moe was faced with a dilemma. Who could possibly replace Shemp's unique brand of comedic chaos? The answer, surprisingly, came in the form of his youngest brother, Jerome. Now, Jerome was a different breed altogether. Offstage, he was shy, soft-spoken, and unassuming. He lacked Shemp's brashness and professional experience. Moe worried that Jerome's natural silliness wouldn't translate to the demanding world of vaudeville. But Jerome was determined. He had a burning desire to prove himself, to step out of Moe's shadow and make his own mark. He proposed a radical transformation. He shaved his head, completely bald, and lopped off his mustache. The result was a childlike, almost vulnerable appearance that was instantly disarming. When Jerome walked on stage with his new look, the audience erupted in laughter before he even uttered a word. And then, he began to perform. He barked like a dog, squealed in a high-pitched voice, spun around like a top, and generally unleashed a torrent of unpredictable energy. Curly Howard was born that night. Almost overnight, Curly became the undeniable heart of the act. Audiences adored him. He wasn't just funny. He was unpredictable, a human cartoon come to life. Directors quickly realized that Curly didn't need scripted lines. He was an improvisational genius who could turn any accident into comedic gold. If he tripped, it became a gag. If he stammered, it became a routine. He had an uncanny ability to connect with audiences on a primal level, tapping into their inner child with his absurd antics. The Three Stooges, Moe, Larry, and Curly, broke away from Ted Healy and signed with Columbia Pictures in 1934. This was a pivotal moment. Freed from Healy's control, they were able to develop their own unique style of comedy, a style that would soon become synonymous with slapstick itself. Columbia Pictures, known for its low-budget but prolific output, put the Stooges to work at a relentless pace. They were churning out short films at an astonishing rate, 8 or 9 per year, each filmed in less than a week. The studio demanded quantity, and the Stooges delivered. The formula worked. In the midst of the Great Depression, audiences craved escapism, and the Stooges provided it in spades. Their violent slapstick, outrageous improvisations, and sheer lunacy offered a welcome distraction from the harsh realities of everyday life. And Curly was at the center of it all. His childlike innocence, combined with his boundless energy, made him irresistible. Adults laughed at his absurd gags while children imitated his sounds and movements, chasing a hat across a room, bouncing around like a spring, or inventing gibberish on the spot. Curly gave the act a heartbeat that no one else could replicate. Moe, ever the pragmatic one, played the tough leader. Larry, the befuddled middleman, provided a buffer between Moe's aggression and Curly's lunacy. But Curly was the spark that ignited the whole machine, the catalyst that turned chaos into comedy gold. Behind the scenes, Moe took on a dual role. On camera, he was the bully, dishing out slaps and insults with gleeful abandon. Off camera, he was the protector, fiercely negotiating with Columbia producer Harry Cohn for better treatment and more creative control. Moe knew that Curly was the key to their success, while Larry was a talented comedian in his own right, and Moe's straight man persona was essential to the act's dynamic. It was Curly's unpredictability, his ability to turn nonsense into art, that truly distinguished the Stooges from all other slapstick acts. The Stooges from all other slapstick acts. By the late 1930s, the Three Stooges were a household name. Their shorts played in theaters across the country, often as the main attraction before the feature film. Kids shouted Curly's catchphrases on playgrounds while grown-ups imitated their routines at work. Curly wasn't just funny. He was a cultural phenomenon. But even as their fame grew, Moe couldn't shake a nagging sense of unease. Curly was giving the world endless laughter, but off-screen, he was still little brother Jerome, shy, insecure, and ill-equipped to handle the physical and emotional demands of constant stardom. And as the spotlight grew brighter, the cracks began to show. Subtle at first, then increasingly difficult to ignore. The relentless pace, the constant pressure to perform, was taking its toll. By the early 1940s, Curly began to change. His once agile body grew heavier. Years of heavy drinking, late-night parties, and a generally unhealthy lifestyle added weight and fatigue. His movements slowed, his timing faltered, and the boundless energy that had once seemed effortless began to wane. On set, crew members noticed troubling lapses. Curly would forget lines he once delivered instinctively or stare blankly in the middle of a scene, as if unsure of where he was. Sometimes he slurred his words or drifted into confusion. What fans dismissed as Curly being silly was, in reality, the creeping onset of serious health issues. Moe noticed every slip. He had spent his whole life protecting his younger brother, but now, the problem was bigger than a schoolyard bully. It was the relentless machine of Hollywood itself. On more than one occasion, Moe redirected scenes in real time to cover Curly's lapses. If Curly froze, Moe improvised, steering the action until his brother could catch up. To the audience, it looked like part of the act. To Moe, it was a desperate attempt to protect Curly's dignity and salvage the scene. Moe pleaded with Columbia executives, begging them to ease up on Curly, to give him some time to rest and recover. In a handwritten letter, retrieved decades later, Moe warned, "Jerome cannot keep going at this pace. He's exhausted, and I fear we will lose him if you don't act," but his pleas fell on deaf ears. At Columbia, the Stooges were treated as expendable workhorses. The studio was churning out films to meet audience demand, especially during the war years, and they weren't about to slow down for one ailing comedian. The schedule moved on relentlessly, mercilessly. And with every pratfall, every spin, every improvisation, Curly's health edged closer to the breaking point. By 1945, the deterioration was undeniable. In shorts such as Idiots Deluxe and If a Body Meets a Body, fans began noticing that something was off. Curly's once bellowing voice sounded weaker than ever. His energy had dipped, and his timing became slack. To most audiences, he was still funny, but to Moe, every laugh was a knife in the gut. He could see that the brilliance was no longer instinct. It was forced, a desperate attempt to keep up with the demands of the role. Curly was pushing himself through the pain, performing out of obligation, not joy. Larry Fine later revealed, "We tried to hide Curly's condition. Moe told us to do whatever we could to make him look okay on screen, but deep down we knew he was in bad shape." To the public, Curly was still the lovable clown. But behind the curtains, the man was falling apart. Moe carried the guilt inside. He knew that the schedule was an extortion on his brother. At the same time, he knew that the act would collapse without Curly. The family needed money. He was caught between the impossible choice of saving the family business or saving the brother who gave it life. That impossible balance shattered in 1946, but the stroke wasn't the end of Curly's story. What followed was, perhaps even more agonizing, a long, heartbreaking decline. A slow, quiet goodbye that forced Moe to carry both the act and his crushing guilt alone. Imagine the indignity, the slow erosion of the man who once commanded the screen. After that fateful day in 1946, Jerome, the man behind Curly, never truly returned. He was physically present, yes, but the spark, the uncontainable comedic energy, it was like a light switch had been flipped. He was just gone. Initially, Curly, ever the performer, clung to the hope of a comeback. He'd ask Moe in slurred, halting speech when he could return to the set. He was convinced that with enough rest he'd bounce back, ready to inflict more comedic chaos. Moe, his heart aching with each word, knew the truth. The studio executives, ever pragmatic, had already moved on. They needed a Curly, but Jerome, sadly, wasn't Curly anymore. The reality was far harsher than either brother could have ever imagined. The years that followed were a slow, agonizing descent. There were further strokes, each one stealing more of what remained. His speech became even harder to decipher, his movements more labored, and his once quick mind became increasingly clouded with confusion. He'd forget lines, confuse faces, lapse into moments of heartbreaking disorientation. At times, he wouldn't recognize old friends. Other times, he seemed trapped between a childlike innocence and sudden, violent bursts of frustration. Flashes of the man he once was, struggling against the prison of his failing body. The medical understanding of strokes was woefully limited in those days. Treatments offered little solace, offering little more than band-aids on a gaping wound. Moe, witnessing this agonizing decline, was utterly devastated. He'd always been Jerome's protector, the older brother who shielded him from bullies and hardship. But this was a foe he couldn't fight. He was helpless, forced to watch as his brother, his friend, his partner, slowly faded away. Despite the studio pressure to find a replacement, and the crushing weight of maintaining the Stooges' legacy, Moe remained steadfast. He visited Jerome religiously, often bringing along reels of their old shorts to project onto the sterile hospital walls. For brief, fleeting moments, a flicker of recognition would light up Jerome's face. He would chuckle at his own antics, at the man he once was. For Moe, those smiles were both a comfort and a torment. They proved that Jerome's spark still flickered beneath the surface. But they also served as a constant, painful reminder of everything the stroke had stolen. Curly's personal life during this period was no less turbulent. His marriages had always been complicated. In 1947, he married Valerie Newman, his fourth wife. She was a strong woman, a devoted woman, who provided him with stability and unwavering care during his darkest days. She stayed with him until the very end, navigating the complex emotional landscape of his illness with grace and compassion. Friends who visited recalled a man who was often lost in his own world, alternating between moments of surprising warmth and lucidity and stretches of heartbreaking detachment. There was one final, fleeting glimpse of the old Curly on film. In the 1947 film, Hold That Lion, Curly made a brief cameo appearance, seated quietly in the background. It was the only film to feature all three Howard brothers, Moe, Shemp, and Curly, together. He looks frail, almost gaunt, his face etched with the marks of his illness. He barely speaks, offering only a delicate, almost ghostly smile. To unsuspecting viewers, it might have seemed like a harmless, nostalgic nod to the past, but for those who knew the truth, it was a painful reminder of what had been lost. Moe later confessed that seeing Curly in that cameo broke his heart more than it uplifted him. It was a stark, undeniable confirmation that the vibrant, irrepressible performer was gone, replaced by a shadow of his former self. By 1951, Curly's condition had deteriorated to the point where long-term care became unavoidable. He spent the final months of his life confined to various nursing homes and sanitariums. Family and close friends visited regularly, but each meeting carried the weight of the unspoken knowledge that the end was near. The man who had brought laughter to millions was now confined to a bed, his body ravaged by illness, his mind slowly slipping away. Then, on January 18, 1952, Jerome Lester Horwitz, known to the world as Curly Howard, passed away at the age of 48. The world reacted with shock and disbelief. Fans who remembered his boundless energy and childlike innocence struggled to reconcile that image with the tragic, quiet ending. Newspaper obituaries celebrated his comedic genius, but most shied away from acknowledging the pain and suffering that had ultimately claimed him. To the public, Curly remained frozen in time, the lovable, eternally youthful clown. But for Moe, Curly's death was a wound that would never fully heal. He carried the weight of it for the rest of his days, a constant reminder of the brother he had loved, the brother he had tried to protect, the brother he felt he had ultimately failed. He later confessed that he had been mourning Jerome for years, long before his actual passing. With Curly gone, a vital piece of the Three Stooges was missing. The magic, that unquantifiable spark that had made them unique, had been extinguished. Moe and Larry soldiered on, first with Shemp, and later with Joe Besser and Curly Joe DeRita, trying to recapture the old magic. But according to Moe, it was never the same. The heart had been ripped out of the act, and while the world moved forward, celebrating the legacy of the Three Stooges and the enduring appeal of Curly, Moe quietly carried the burden of his guilt, a burden that would only grow heavier with time, until, finally, in his own final days, the truth he had hidden for decades finally spilled out, reshaping Curly's legacy forever.